So you want to do a launch, you want to get something out into the world, and you know, based on gurus, based on YouTube videos, Google searches, that there are a few things you need to launch, right? You need an audience, you need an email list, you need a program, you need a funnel, you need marketing, you need social media. Great. But the thing is that what you actually need to start a launch before all of that is a decision. The decision that says, I am going to do this, the date, the actual hard date of when you are going to launch. I find that a lot of people talk about launching and they don't actually set a date. They don't actually make a decision as to when it's going to launch off. And then everything, resistance, tech issues, procrastination start to take up more and more time. Life stuff gets in the way, and then the launch gets pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And so, yes, of course, you need all of those bits and pieces. But my question to you is if you really want to get something launched this spring, you need to make the decision today that you're going to launch and set the date. Now, for Kathy and I at Funnel Gorgeous, we're going to actually be doing a round of Launch Gorgeous this spring. We have a launch date set, so the minute you come into the program, you know exactly the day that you're going to launch, and everything works towards that date. If you are sitting there and you're thinking, gosh, why haven't I launched yet? Chances are the decision and the date have not been set yet. It never fails that when you want to launch something for yourself, it seems like there's no time, even though you seem to have time for your kids, for your clients, for your customers. But when it comes to your stuff, it just falls to the back burner. So here are 4 hidden areas in your schedule and in your day where you can build your launch. Number 1, I know it's cliche, but in the early morning. Maybe for a little bit of a time, you should actually make your morning routine your afternoon routine and instead put that high powered brain work of building your launch first thing in the morning. I know when I was writing a book, I did this. Instead of getting up, showering, walking, all that kind of stuff, making the smoothie, I got up and I wrote a chapter in a book. And then I did that stuff later because you know what? It doesn't take all your brain power to make a smoothie and it doesn't take all your brain power to work out, but it does take all your brain power to write a book. And so I switched things around temporarily. So that is number 1. Number 2, when you are in wasted time. So things like waiting in line at school drop off. There is so much you can brainstorm and write down if you have a notebook with you or you have your phone with you where you can do voice memos and you can start to brainstorm content, ideas, headlines, hooks. There's a lot of wasted time in the day. It may not feel like the most productive time, but you can get stuff done in those periods. The third place that you can find time to work on your launch is late at night. For some people, this is tricky. So you want to pick maybe just one night a week where you maybe sleep in more or you take an afternoon nap or you do something where you know you're going to get that uninterrupted time. And I think that's the most important part is where is uninterrupted hours? And for a lot of us, it's not till at night. So let's say it's 10 to midnight and it's your late night session. You want to set yourself up for success for this. So you want to know exactly what has to be accomplished. You want to make sure your notifications are turned off and you want to make sure you're as rested as possible so that you can actually get that work session done. Better to have once a week late night session than to do it every single night and completely burn yourself out. And the last place where you can actually find time is during Netflix. I know we all love to binge Netflix shows. They are amazing, but you know what? Maybe for a season, instead of watching those super complicated plot shows, you can watch something that doesn't really take a lot of brain power. You know, baking shows, flower shows, just the easy stuff where you can actually be sitting down at your computer and writing some copy or doing some design work while listening to Netflix in the background. It's not going to be your most productive time, but you'll find that if you associate a habit of oh, I'm watching this baking show and I'm going to work on my sales page, you're going to find that those little time periods add up to get you to your finish line. So you have an offer. You want to launch it. But for whatever reason, you are lacking confidence. You just are unsure. This is where probably 95% of courses and launches go to die because people don't feel confident enough to get themselves out there. It is fear that is holding the majority of people back. And why? A lot of us don't really have a good set of benchmarks to know if we're on the right track. And I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations. And so what happens is those expectations are super high. we don't have benchmarks, and then we start to lose our nerve and we start to lose confidence. This usually happens because we see a lot of the big launches out there on the internet, but we don't see what happened the first, the second, or the third time they launched. So if you need some confidence, sometimes some simple math can help you see that you're on the right track. And I tell people this all the time. Like, if you were to picture a classroom, the average classroom holds, let's say, 20 to 30 students, and I asked you to come into that classroom and teach 30 students. Some of you would be super excited, some of you would be nervous and be like, oh, that's a whole classroom full of people. And yet somehow, when we do our first launch and we get 10, 20, or 30 students, we feel like a failure. It's so crazy because if you actually saw those 30 humans in a classroom, I bet you would feel differently. So, a lot of this is around setting benchmarks and setting expectations because for most of us, the first, the second, the third launch, anywhere around 30 people is an amazing launch. It may not be the money that you want to make quite yet, but everybody starts somewhere. And if you feel like today you could confidently get in front of a classroom and teach on a topic and teach 30 people on a whiteboard, on a blackboard, teaching them what you know, then you do have the confidence to launch. You just need clear expectations, some KPIs and math so that you can get your offer out there. So, how to launch without going broke? I find that a lot of people, when they get ready to launch, they don't know how much money they should invest in their launch. And so, the fastest way to not be broke when you launch is to know your numbers. So let me tell you a little bit of a story. I had someone who was launching a course. It was about a $200 course, and they had a very, very small new audience. So now all you would have to do is to think about, all right, what are we expecting in terms of numbers? This is the first thing that goes wrong is people have wildly unrealistic expectations of how many people they can actually sell in a launch. There's actually a key performance indicator called push power, which is basically how many people can you get to a sales page, and then we use standard conversion rates of 1 to 5% to estimate how well you're going to do in a launch. Most people don't do this part well. However, let's say that you're hanging out with me and Kathy, you're in Launch Gorgeous, and we give you an accurate estimate and we see, okay, it looks like you're going to get about 20 students at $200. That is going to be $4,000, let's say. Now, most people understand that in order to launch something, you have to invest. And it's very, very common in any sort of business endeavor that when you invest in something, sometimes it takes a while to make back. And that is normal. If you were to open up, a cupcake shop on the street corner, you'd have to borrow 50 or 60,000 from the bank, and then you would slowly pay that loan back over the next 1 to 2 years. So in a launch, you say, okay, I expect to make about $4,000 in this first launch. Maybe I'll make $6,000 in the next launch, and maybe I'll make $10,000 in the third launch if you're going to launch it 3 times, right? So you end up with 4, 6, and 10. So now you're at about $20,000. So if you want to be able to pay off your investment within that first year of that course, you don't really want to invest more than $20,000. And if you want to be able to be profitable in that first 12 months, maybe you're going to set aside $10,000 to launch. Once you have a budget for launch, now you can say, all right, what are the things that I actually need? So in our program in Launch Gorgeous, we try to help you with the things that are pretty expensive, right? Copywriting is expensive, design is expensive, tools are not really that expensive, but those things can really add up quickly. So we try to reduce that cost for you. A place where you're going to spend money is in building your audience. But if you have a Facebook ads person or an Instagram growth hacker and they tell you that they want to spend $10,000 to grow your audience, you've just blown out your entire investment budget. So when you launch, you want to think, okay, how much money do I need to build the funnel, get the offer, get the strategy? Okay, so let's say that's $3,000 you're going to spend to do that. Great, now you have $7,000 left. Maybe you're going to spend $3,000 or so on Facebook ads to build your audience. Now you've spent $6,000. Okay, you still have another 4,000 to invest into the program in the first year, but maybe you do your first launch, and your first launch you make $4,000, which is awesome because now you've paid off more than 50% of your investment. That second launch you make 6,000, maybe you spend a little more, you're almost 100% paid off. And then by the third launch, it's all profit. A lot of people don't do this. They either try to bootstrap so much and spend no money that it doesn't really work because they haven't done the right copy, or they haven't really gotten the right strategy dialed in, and so then they don't make any money, or they overspend because they haven't budgeted, and then they end up making money and their launch goes great, but they think they're broke because they overspent on ads or things like that. So that's how you launch without ending up broke at the end of it.